So welcome panelists. Because we have so many wonderful brokers with us on the panel, we are not going to do formal introductions because that just takes up a lot of time. Oh, we got Coy Davidson. I go to my different screen. Welcome, Coy. Good to see you this morning, sir.
Good morning, afternoon, whatever it is.
Yep. Hello, everybody. Welcome to all of our audience members. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the new to CRE series. Whether you're new or not, you just need to brush up on those prospecting skills, which we all do. You are here to hear from the best. If you're not doing much prospecting, you should start. I'm sure your market is on fire, but you always want to make sure that you are keeping the iron hot, so to speak, and keeping that pipeline full. So with that, we're going to kick off. We are not going to have our panelists, like I said, introduce themselves. So I do ask you, when you answer that first question or have some value to add, panelists, make sure that you introduce yourself with your name, your firm, and your market. Okay, guys? All right. Let's Who has what is your #1 prospecting tip? What works for you the best? And I'm going to start with you, Michael Arnold. And remember to introduce yourself.
I'm Michael Arnold with the Tenant Consulting Group at NAI Capital. I run our Tenant Consulting Group in Southern California, as well as our Vice Chairman of Global Corporate Services for NAI Global. Primarily, my #1 tip is I scour periodicals every single day and every single evening. I think for myself, finding different decision makers, understanding where different businesses are going, who the decision makers are, where they left, where they go, has been paramount in business. As a matter of fact, quick story, by finding out one of the decision makers had taken over the head of a PR firm in LA, reached out to a friend of mine who I tasked on LinkedIn to figure out how he knew the person. He knew him well. Within 24 hours, there was an email that was made, introduction. And as of May 1st, we're supposed to start a kickoff where they're in 30,000 square feet now, probably downsized to about 20. Average rents are in the $48 to $60 range. So it should be a nice deal this year. You're muted, Natalie.
I love it. I love it. I'm muted. First glitch of the day. Got it out of the way. That is awesome. So being super proactive and then also bringing that value, Michael. Thank you. Great answer. How about you, Gabe? Marans, who needs no introduction either.
Oh boy. All right. Where do we start here? I mean, I'm a big fan of cold calling in general and playing 4D business development because building long-term relationships is built on the foundation of trust earned over decades. And I made this observation yesterday in a meeting with a client. It's never the big things that earn trust and loyalty. It's the small things that most people don't think to do that earn you trust and loyalty. It's when a client calls you up and says, I know you don't do this, but can you help us put together a furniture inventory list that really earns you a lot of credit. And so in terms of BD, social, particularly LinkedIn for me, has been an extraordinary force, but it's really been a complementary force to my primary BD efforts, which is the standard connecting the dots, getting introductions, repeat business, and then leveraging the strength of our team who are very actively on the phones. And just again, trying to approach it from a holistic standpoint in a way that allows us to have as many touches with as many high-profile people as possible.
So you would say that LinkedIn is your #1 like social media type of, and I don't like to refer to LinkedIn as social media, but you would say that that's your #1 tool, so to speak, as an online platform?
Yeah, very much so. So let's break it down just very quickly. When we think about social media, I certainly would combine LinkedIn in that category. So if we think about it, the big ones, you got Facebook, which is really more of a B2C type of platform in terms of real marketing. You can certainly stay in touch with personal relationships and clients on Facebook, but there is a little bit of an age demographic breakdown. Instagram, much in the same way, fantastic to reach to consumers if you're a direct-to-consumer type of e-commerce company, and a great way if you're a professional to stay in touch with clients and friends and relatives. But then when you talk about B2B relationship building, you're really left with two different platforms. One is LinkedIn, and the other one is Twitter. And the hardcore Twitter people tend to look down on the LinkedIn people, and the hardcore LinkedIn people look on in amazement at how you possibly are able to keep up with Twitter because it's such a fast moving platform. And so in terms of building audience, I think that the primary ways to do that are on Twitter and on LinkedIn. It's different demographics, different approach to doing things. But I think beyond that, it's mostly experimental, although I know that there are some strong feelings about Clubhouse on these little boxes. But I don't want to cannibalize too much time because there's a lot of smart people on this call.
There sure are, absolutely, and great answer. And I hadn't, heard a couple of those things. And I happen to like Twitter and LinkedIn myself, so I didn't know that they were people that fell so polar opposite, on both sides of the fence. So that's interesting. And if you don't follow Gabe on LinkedIn, everybody, especially if you're newer to the industry or considering should I get into the industry, absolutely follow Gabe because he not only shares why he does what he does, but how to do what he does. So you really, really want to follow him for some best practices. So thank you.
Yes. Natalie.
Yes.
I'd like to kind of piggyback off what Michael Arnold said earlier about sometimes he uses like old methods and combines them with new methods. Elizabeth Wilke, I cover pretty much the Southeast, but my main markets is New Orleans and Baton Rouge. But going off of what Michael said, I was reading the newspaper during COVID. I know we're all sick of COVID, but reading the black and white newspaper and started reading about Louisiana health and hospitals. And from there, decided to reach out on LinkedIn with some of the directors, just letting them know if they need anything as far as staging sites, however I can help, please let me know. And then actually within 2 hours, received a phone call back and found myself, I do multifamily, and found myself in a completely different asset class for hospitals and had the opportunity to work with the Army. And if anyone's had that opportunity, that's pretty fun. They pick up the phone, contact you, and you're pretty much playing by their rules at that point. But I mean, it was just a great way to reach out and it's, connect with pretty much anyone that you can, whether it is in the social media realm or reviving an old CRM or picking up a newspaper. So.
I like that. Thank you, Elizabeth. Absolutely. And how about something that you've heard, maybe Carol, you can add to this. When it comes to prospecting, is there something that you tried that you heard would be a good tool and you tried it out and it didn't work for you? Anything in that vein, panelists, that you want to speak to? Carol, starting with you, that you heard was, hey, you got to do this, you've got to do it, and you tried it and it wasn't for you?
Yeah, I don't canvas like on foot. I've never done it, not from the beginning. I don't believe in it. But I do believe in the different type of canvassing, of focusing on the business that you frequent. So I shop within a 3 to 5 mile radius from my house. Those are the people that I target and continue to maintain in contact. They see me in their restaurants eating and had conversations with them, ended up rolling out a new franchise who then connected me to several other franchises that I've been able to roll out. So it's still canvassing, but I would say it's more intentional with the businesses that I frequent and shop at and eat at.
Okay, I like that. And
I didn't introduce myself. I'm Carol. I'm with Mosley Commercial. I'm specialized in South Texas markets, and I'm a completely tenant rep, no landlord.
All right. You have your handle and your name. Carol does a lot. So I'm so happy you joined us. And this is my first time seeing like a live version of you. And so I just feel so honored you joined us today, Carol. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And Coy Davidson, can you, anything in that area that you would, and you shared with me that you're not huge on prospecting in traditional manners, anything that you can share?
Well, I think it's market presence. And like I said, I make warm calls, but most of my business is word of mouth, social media, content marketing. So I found my blog website's been just a huge thing over the years, and I use social media to distribute my content. But I find that by having a huge web presence, when I do get referred to someone, they're going to Google you. So they're looking at my website. And when I walk into a prospect meeting, I'm already qualified. So I don't have to spend any time throwing up about what I've done and my qualifications, that's why they called me. And I can concentrate on what their pain points are, what their issues are. That's sales 101. So.
Okay, so let's dive into that deeper. So the people in the audience understand, and we've got some really wonderful people in the audience. We've got Greg Harris down there. Hi, Greg. But what Coy is saying, guys, is have that online social proof where people can Google you. And so if you Google Coy Davidson, which by the way, do it. It's how I learned to be a broker. That's what you do. You Google Coy's blogs on medical leasing. You Google, I mean, he wrote every blog on everything. And then he co-authored a book with Michael Mazzotta first book I bought in commercial real estate along with Rod's books. That's what you do. And then you go into the pitch and they're like, okay, I've got the best in the business. That's what you're saying, right, Coy? That you don't have to go and improve yourself because you've got this online roster resume.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. That's such a good thing.
Natalie, there's a lot of people out there who don't have resumes when you go into a pitch. And while we all have been very fortunate because we work really hard, and I think most of us are pretty humble enough to know that we got to where we are today because we worked really hard and established a relationship like Coy did. But I'm sure our audience is probably interested to hear what are some of the things that you have to do to get to that point to where I'm going to go be in a meeting with the top 5 tenant rep people in Los Angeles. What are some of those things you're doing to try and win that business if all of the resumes are relatively the same? I'd be interested to hear what some of the people on our panel have to say about that.
Michael, I'll take a stab at that. So I'm in New York, and it's a Shark Tank frequently, and so one of the things that I've tried to intentionally differentiate is by not being New York rude most of the time, or if I am New York rude, then at least doing it on behalf of my clients, and that includes sometimes brokers who I co-broke with. But you know, the key here is what comes first: the knowledge or refining how you message that information. And I started spitting out stuff to the ether well before I was qualified to do so. And you learn as you go. And that's the key. You cannot wait until you're perfect. Just start to share your thoughts and your perspective on things, and you're going to get there. Don't wait until you're ready, because you ain't ever going to be ready.
So one of the things when I was going to pitch business that I had to learn, and we all learn brick and mortars the same way, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I think it's important because it looked like Justin put a question into the chat box about approaching the standpoint of when we were newer in the business. And I would do things like study how quickly elevators worked in different projects. If certain elevators had a different capacity to work quicker, and I knew certain staffs, for example, were higher up in a project, how older were those systems? How efficient were they? So when their employees took breaks, were they taking more time? Were they less time in the workplace? So I think to create a competitive advantage, you have to get into the minutia of what's going on with certain projects, as well as really understanding the business of which you're trying to go pitch. So to Coy's point, like he's going to walk in, he's super qualified. Gabe, Conrad, a bunch of us we can go in and our resumes speak for themselves. But what's our differentiator? And I think the point is, someone told me a long time, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, because God knows all of us as brokers speak way more than we should be listening. So for those who are newer in the business, my recommendation would be close your mouth, open your ears, listen to what people are doing, and then really process it before trying to think about what you think you should say.
I'd like to chime in on that a little bit, Natalie. I spent probably my first 5 to 10 years in the business going in and trying to prove that I was the smartest broker in the city. Yep. And basically telling every tenant about every single one of their neighbors, what the pros and cons and of this building. I mean, so that there was absolutely zero doubt that I knew exactly what was going on in their market. And that works to a degree, and you're going to get hired sometimes that way. But what I've done the last decade is I've changed my tune completely, where I want to know everything about the company and the people first. And then I find my pitches when I get in front of people. The first, let's say I have an hour, the first 45 minutes is talking about them and their company and what's going on inside their company. And then throughout that time period, there's some sort of synergy that's created, whether it's we're from the same town, we're from the same college, we have the same kids, we're the same religion, whatever it might, we have the same hobbies. And so by the time that 45 minutes or so is up, it's like we're best friends. And what I've learned from many sales books out there, 90% of the hiring decision is based upon, does that person want to work with you, and do they like you?
Yep. Do they
So
trust you?
the first 10 years of my career, I tried to only win, and I was only winning on that 10%. And that's am I smart enough? So I create the synergy for the first 45 minutes. And then they're like, oh, well, I guess we should talk about real estate for a little bit, right? And now I've broken the window down on the salesman, that a lot of times you walk in there and you got this glass wall up in front of you. Now I've knocked that down. Now we're just having dialogue. And then to Coy and Michael and Natalie, people that have got great resumes, then I start talking a little bit about what we've done. And they're like, oh, check. Yeah, let's work with this guy. So reverse your whole source of attacking to win deals, and you will see your hit rate go massively higher.
Absolutely. And before anybody else speaks up, if you have a question, Adam Collins, you just asked a great question. Please do it in the question area, not in the chat box, because I'm going to ask the questions of the panelists via that area, because there's so many chats going on, I can't keep up. So please copy and paste the question into that avenue. But I do want to ask Adam's question, and this I'll point towards, and Monica, I want to welcome you. We had some tech glitches, but Monica, I'm so happy to have you here, and this is our first time live, and I'm so excited to have you here. So welcome, Monica. Can I hear you?
Can you hear me?
Oh, perfect. Yes. Hi.
Great. Glad to be here. I have some comments already, so I'll go after Adam's question.
Well, no, actually, please do. Add your comments.
Okay. Well, I think that the comments that were just made were spot on. What I have found is, people really connect with personality first, in my opinion. That's been my experience. And then once they feel that the personalities are a good connection, then they go and they do a little bit more research on you. One thing that helped me when I first started out, rather than trying to be this all-knowing, power broker or power at the time I started actually in corporate America, being this all-knowing deal maker, I was just very genuine and very humble. And that's just my personality. So I would just say, be who you are. And I would lead sometimes with why I got in the industry instead of trying to pretend that I knew things that I didn't. I would give my story of how I got started in the business. I actually answered a job board in college and had no idea I was going to get all this responsibility to lease up a shopping center, and just why I loved what I do, and I'm excited. And so when you're new, I think use that story because it's the truth, and people will really connect with that. So that's one thing that I could share. And then the other comment, when we were making tips on, how to find clients, one thing I can say is I started in specialty leasing, and now we call it pop-up shops. And the longer that I'm in this business, the more I realize how priceless that experience was, because as a deal maker, when you're on the pop-up shop side, you wake up thinking, what can I find that nobody else has found? What is that gem that nobody else has found? You are the trend, rather than taking on the trend and reading in the trade magazines what's already happened. You're constantly in a mindset of, how do I find something that's never been found? How do I be the first deal maker to do this deal in Georgia or New York or wherever you are? So I would say keep the lens on of constantly trying to find what's new and what's fresh. So some comments I have to start with.
Yeah, no, great advice, Monica. And I love the admitting that you're new and there's things that you don't know. It's so refreshing when people
Yes,
they are, and not try to be the brightest thing in the room. It's so off-putting when people do that. So wonderful. Yes, thank you. I'm so glad you added that. And to ask Alvaro, did you have something?
Yeah, sure, Natalie. I just wanted to chime in this subject, especially going back to those what happens when you were newer to the business and prospecting. So the good thing is that I would consider myself the rookie out of this amazing master panel. So I am on the bottom of that list. But the good thing is that recent experience regarding that is three main things. One, Natalie just said it, right? Don't try to be the smartest person in the room. That's kind of off-putting. If you say it directly, but you can portray yourself as the smartest person in the room by making smart questions. Sometimes even to answers that you already have because you made your research, but you want to get that connection with your prospect, with your client, saying, "What do you think about this and this subject?" And they'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's super important to us because this and this and that." And you probably already know it, but it's very different when you ask it on an open-ended question in a way, and them forgive you the answer because it's a conversation, not a masterclass like I made all my research and this is why I'm so good. And the other part, and I would agree 110% with Monica, is building authentic report, right? And that means getting to anything, every little detail in a conversation, and try to build on that, right? So, for example, if Gabe that was now sharing that he's trying not to be New York rude, and you're having this conversation, you can lead with a funny story, like, "Hey, did you know something? I knew this guy who once got mugged in a very ugly part of Philly, and he got his wallet, he took it out, and then he took the money out and then returned it with all his cards and IDs, and he said, 'Why did you did this?' Well, because this is Philly, not New York." And that usually is a killer joke with New York brokers, right? So when you get little details and you try to put them into conversation, you build rapport authentically. And then the last but not least, that is very, very important when adding value, you got to tune into the right radio station, which is WIFM, right? What's in it for me? So when you get into what's in it for me, not meaning you, the broker, but the actual prospect or your client, that's when you start to add value. And I want to share just a very, very quick example to not run too much time. This was starting a couple of years in my career. This was my first client that I prospected and actually landed with an exclusive tenant rep. And I tried to cold call him, barrier, because I'm a new broker, right? So it was like, "Who are you?" Nobody cares. Click. Okay, then I'll try to send them an email. Got lost. Social media, blocked. And it's really tough. But then I said, I need to get some face-to-face time. And thankfully, there was this networking event that had shared service companies. And I'll get the context of that because I didn't introduce myself. Sorry, Natalie. I'll do that at the end. And I looked for that person in that company. It was called Auxis. It's an outsourcing company, US based here in Costa Rica. And I sat with them and I made the questions like, "Oh, you're from Auxis. Oh, you know what? I follow your company. I love what you do with this and this and that. How are you doing with X thing?" And they're like, "Oh, we have a chance with that. Oh, yes, you're right about this." By the end of the conversation, literally this person said, "You know what? Stop, 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 stop. I get it. You know us. You're asking questions. Here's my card. We need to get a meeting with you and our CFO because this is super valuable." So getting those three things, right? Listen, make the right questions, authentic report, and what's in it for them.
Wonderful. Yes. Yes. And I love that story. You were stalking them. Let's just call a spade a spade. And that's what us
Right.
brokers do, right?
It
That's
is what it is.
Brothers. We hunt. That's the thrill of the hunt.
Exactly.
So that's
Exactly. Exactly.
It's all right. I mean, my worst stalking story, I literally waited outside of a public restroom for a CEO of a publicly traded company who then refused to shake my hand, thank God, but I didn't get the business. So
yes, I've got a few stalking stories too, but well, I'll tell those later. But I ended up getting the business. So
And Natalie, are we, I mean, I know you started on Adam's question, and we've kind of talked around it and in and out of it a little bit, but Adam, I think I'm Yandell Wood with JLL in Louisville. I'm an office broker. I do both tenant and landlord rep. But you're talking about building rapport and also discussing real estate. We could talk about the virtual world, I guess, in a minute. I'm going back to, I guess, pre-pandemic. Chances are, or hopefully when you're talking to somebody, you're not in insurance, right? Everybody's got a guy. Nobody wants to talk about insurance, but chances are if you're in real estate, in my experience, most people want to talk about real estate. It's something that everybody knows a little bit about. It's something everybody has. So when you're getting into a discussion about it, hopefully you've done your research like Conrad was talking about with, you know who you're going to be talking to. Try and find common elements with them before that conversation takes place, before the meeting takes place. hopefully you've had a good value proposition that's gotten you the conversation, so that, you know, once you do establish rapport, you can transition easily into the conversation about real estate. It usually, like he said, doesn't come up right away. You're not going to walk into a meeting and say, hey, I'm Yandell, let's talk about your real estate. That's just not the way things naturally flow. So psychologically, relationally, however you want to say it, you're just going to go in and be yourself. I think somebody said that, and you're going to be authentic. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. And the rapport should come, and the real estate part of it will come in its time, but you don't have to force the issue. So I don't think any of us go in and try and force the conversation directly to the real estate. This is not the way people work, in my experience. So there's not so much of a balance, it's more of a flow. And I think if you get the flow right, you shouldn't have a problem with that kind of conversation.
Yeah, and I think, you know, obviously, and not forcing the conversation and not making any inappropriate jokes, or I know we all get nervous. It's like, what do I do with my hands? But I think Adam's question is something that I remember thinking, thank you, Natalie got the joke. I remember thinking that too. It's like, you know, what do you talk about? And how do you build that rapport? And as you get more comfortable in your career, you'll be able to judge that you really don't have to talk as much about the real estate piece, because God, you just know it like this, like the back of your hand. And so you'll be able to go in and really just shoot the shit and talk golf or whatever it is that you're doing that weekend, or but there is that balance, because they need to know that you're the person and you have the expertise to get the deal done. But there really is just a way to solidify that without really going into the details about who repped who and all of that. So,
and yeah, people like to talk about themselves too. So once you get them started, chances are they'll talk, and they'll talk pain points in real estate, but you don't have to do all the talking. In fact, you know, try and let them do most of it, and that makes them feel even better.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think the listen piece is huge. And I think what happens when we're newer, we're so nervous. We just, you know, we tend to want to talk through the nerves, and you really have to stop and listen, because if you do, that client will give you a lot of information that you need to actually turn it around and use it to seal the deal with the client. And they will tell you what they need and what they're looking for. You'll learn about their personality. And so listening is very important. And as a broker, I think you have to remember, whether you're commercial or residential, that this is a huge job that you're doing. I mean, you're going to be single-handedly responsible for one of the largest, if not the largest, purchases these people make in their lives, or lease rather, and a lot of times in the 7-figure category. So, you know, how you approach people, having, you know, the integrity and being very genuine is very important. And what I've decided is I've just given it to God, and I'm just, you know, I'm pretty much like, you know what, I'm going for this client, you know, hopefully it's a connection. If not, then, you know, I'll move on to the next one. And it really, to me, is a two-way street. When I'm pitching clients, I'm also deciding if this is a client that will work for me, if it's somebody that I want to represent. So it actually goes both ways. I mean, all money isn't good money. And I've had some terrible experiences where I know God was telling me, don't do it. And I signed the client up, and it ended up blowing up in my face. And that's a whole nother, you know, Zoom webinar that we can do, right, on the dark side, you know.
Just say no. Okay, we'll do that Zoom, and I'm having
yes. So it really does go both ways. Don't be self-hungry for the deal. You know, make sure they align with, you know, make sure it's a client that, you know, they want to trust you, but you want to be able to trust them too. Are they going to work with you exclusively? Are they going to? I had a deal where the client signed an exclusive, and it was her first deal. And in my exclusive, it states very specifically that you are supposed to do all of the due diligence. You are supposed to check all the boxes, make sure your architect reviews the plans, your construction person, if there needs plumbing, you know, the topography, everything is very specific in my exclusive, which is about 3 pages. And sure enough, we get out a purchase agreement. Everybody's happy. We think we got a deal. And I won't say exactly what she did, but she skipped. And I kept asking her over and over, did you check this? Did you check this? And it got to the point I sounded like a broken record. Well, she didn't check something that was, I mean, just huge. And the deal ended up dying. And it's specifically because she didn't do the groundwork that she was supposed to do. So in that, I just say, make sure you're also, filtering your clients as well, so you don't spin your wheels.
Yes, spinning your wheels. But that's
Hey,
something that
Natalie.
all new brokers do. Yes.
Sorry, it's Vinny. I just wanted to chime in.
Oh, yeah, no, please do, Vinny, of course.
Because I know someone's going to beat me to it if I don't speak up quickly. We got a lot of really phenomenal real estate professionals, very successful people that are in this room. And I keep thinking to myself, there's a lot of really valuable feedback that we're hearing once you're in the room. As far as, I love that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason example, because we really do talk too much. But there's a lot of discussion about what happens when you're in the room. And I think of prospecting and I think of, well, how do you get in the room, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it's about. I tend to pull my hair out, even at 12 years in the business. And again, so I'm a tenant rep and a landlord rep broker strictly for office in Princeton, New Jersey. And so, as we listen to people talk about, well, I'm, doing 100,000 feet or 200,000 feet. And I go, that's really great, but how the hell did you get there in the first place? So for me, I step back and I kind of strip it down, and I've been taking some notes here. I think walking your market. I know someone said earlier, I'm not really a canvasser, but I have my own unique way of canvassing. It really is critical. You have to learn your market. You're coming into an industry, you know nothing, whether you're in retail, industrial, office, you need to learn the inventory. What are the buildings? Who owns them? Who are the tenants that are leasing space in those buildings? And then you go and you build your database, right? So you can knock on the door and say hello if you'd like, or you just go to the lobby. You write down the tenant names on the directory, you walk the building, you never say hi to anybody, but you quietly come back to your desk, more knowledgeable for having physically been in the building, you put your eyes on it, and you have an understanding and a feel for what's there. Now you've picked up and developed some confidence. Now you get on the phone and you call that tenant and you go, hey, I was just in your building. Here's what I saw. How can I help you? You're going to need to develop that language, obviously. I mean, unless someone says, here's what you say, you're going to need to be your own. This notion of authenticity is maybe one of the most important pieces of prospecting. You hear a lot of really great feedback, as I said, from a lot of successful people on this call, but it's because we've all been authentic to ourselves. People will sniff from a mile away BS, right? So believe it or not, even a week into the business, you are more knowledgeable about commercial real estate and your vertical than almost any prospect that you're going to meet with, okay? Create your own insights. Be the professional, because chances are your insights are more on point than the lay tenant who's not really paying attention to the real estate market. So in the vein of being unique, I decided, anything that's strong in this entire world has to have a really strong foundation. So this was, 6-8 years into my career, I kind of stepped back and looking at the prospecting part of my business. And I said, what's my foundation? I came up with pillars, 4 pillars. And I started playing around with some of the words, prospecting being one of them. Okay, I prospect. Okay, I'm calling or I'm phoning. I got these 4 P's, my 4 pillars: prospecting, phoning, persistence, and professionalism. And I just quickly want to touch on the persistence and the professionalism. If you make one call to somebody and they are completely rude, it's not Gabe, because Gabe's a nice guy, he's not being rude, but they're really rude, right? They're going to forget who you are literally 5 minutes after they hang up the phone. Some other real estate brokers are going to call them back. They might be rude to that person as well. But you're going to call. You're going to keep calling, and they'll never remember that you called before and that they told you to go take a hike. And one day you're going to call, and they're going to go, oh, I'm so happy that you called. I just got a notification from my landlord. It says my lease is expiring in 9 months. I've got to give notification. What's the market like? So you have to keep calling because your time will come. Lastly, and I'll end on this, is that professionalism component to it. if you are the rude guy and you're calling and you're going, I can't believe you haven't taken my call. I've called you a dozen times. You have no better shot at getting their business than you did on the first call or any call in between that call. Just continue to be professional. That's what we are. We're real estate professionals. Nothing should rock your world. And if they see that you are on that path, you can't be moved. They're going to go, this is the person I want to work with. I'll typically get, you know, Vinny, we really thank you for sticking through with us. And they would say this, you were professionally persistent. We really appreciated it. And when the time came, you were our guy. You were always going to be our guy.
That's the key, professionally persistent, not aggressive or rude, you know, intrusive.
Politely persistent.
Yes.
I like that one too.
Yes, that's another one. Yeah, Nina, yes.
To piggyback on Vinny, which was brilliant. And my name is Nina Steiner. I am with Compass Commercial, having been a tenant rep for 6 years with a prior boutique tenant rep company. And I absolutely love Compass. Yes, it's primarily a residential house, but the mindset and the culture of the company is beyond compare. I am loving it. I joined a group called the 6 a.m.ers, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. We're up with the Zoom and everybody's talking mindset. I'm meeting people all over the country. And just to piggyback on persistence, one of the 6 a.m.ers texted me the other day, actually through the intranet, through Compass, and said, hey, did you see this referral, this request for a referral? And I jumped online. I went to it. The referral was for a small office. And by the way, I specialize in office. I'm an office tenant rep. My niche has been entertainment, the Hollywood, but this was something different. And I just jumped on it. I emailed the agent, residential agent. I texted him and I sent him my LinkedIn.
Yes.
And then he said, listen, I've gotten so many responses. Thank you very much for reaching out. I'm going to make my decision yesterday. So at the end of the day, I hadn't heard from him. And I texted him. I said, hey, I assume you've chosen the person you want to give the referral to. And no worries. And thank you. Please think of me again. And he said, on the contrary, Nina, you were the only one that really reached out and got back to me. You were persistent. You got back to me. And you know what? That's what I want from my clients. So you won the deal.
Oh, yes. Look, we're not on Clubhouse. We don't have to mute and unmute our mic. Yes, congrats. That is so awesome.
I mean, it's a small deal, but you know, who cares?
Who cares? Are you joking? Small? I'll take
it. All adds up. It all adds up. And I'm just so pleased that, you know, I wasn't totally in his face. I waited a day.
No, you were professionally persistent.
Yeah. But that's a reflection of how you add value. You show them that you're on it, you're on the case, and that's what they want for their client. They want you to be, you know, they can rely on you and they want to earn their commission, the referral commission, and it's a win-win. So that's a win-win.
Oh, Nina.
You know, I think that the one thing that, you know, everybody that's watching this can see how hard it is to go out and find clients and everything you have to do to get them. And then you have to maintain them. So, you know, I want to really recommend to all the people watching a good CRM, because you have to do so much work to go out and find these clients that you want to capture that email address, phone number, and then have an email program that's staying in front of them, pick up the phones. I know it sounds kind of corny, but if you're big on doing birthdays and schedule a call with their kid, find a way to stay in front of them, because it takes a lot of work to get these leads, especially if you're new. I mean, in some of these stories I'm hearing from Monica and Alvaro that, you know, they know how hard it is. So you've got to build that base and capture every email that you can, so it allows you to stay in front of these people and also get that email program working on a regular basis.
Yeah, CRMs. I'll take my CRM. Let's all share our CRMs. I think that mine's the best in the entire universe, so I will share mine.
I'm
Great.
so glad.
Yeah, if you could CRMs up, I think that'd be good for anybody to use.
Yeah,
I'm so glad that referrals came up because, you know, that is actually on the top of my list for ways to find clients. I think it's really important that as brokers that when you do get a client that may not fit, you know, your parameters, whether it be there's certain brokers that will only do deals that are 2 million and above, or they don't do industrial, or, you know, whatever, you know, we all kind of have our parameters. Maybe it's someone in another state. Don't just throw that client away. Take out the time to refer them to someone. I know a broker that probably 30% of her business is referrals from residential and commercial brokers that are out of state. I've given out about 4 referrals this year, most of them out of state, one of them in state, 3 of them out of state. What it does is it secures your relationship with that client, and you never know when they're going to come back. So when I'm networking, I'm constantly on the lookout for other brokers that are in other areas that I don't do. So whether it's, you know, residential people, which on a side note, I wish that residential brokers really understood the synergy potential between commercial and residential brokers sharing leads, you know, back and forth. But that's another topic. But I've got a list of, you know, I don't do multifamily. So I've done a couple referrals for multifamily. So it's very important, you know, God loves a giver. It's very important to give referrals. They will come back to you. And more importantly, you're continuing to service the client.
Yeah,
Hey, Natalie.
It's a great side hustle, guys. And
Natalie.
Income's part on that. Yes.
One thing I want to share, and this could be beneficial, or some people may take this the wrong way, but one of the things I learned a long time ago was you need to understand your time value of money as a broker. And that means you cannot work on everything because you're just hungry and you have to feed yourself.
Yeah, very true.
I look at myself, I value my time on an hourly basis, and I put a number. For example, if I bill out $700 an hour or $500 an hour, if I take an assignment and I'm spending more time on an hourly basis, just like an attorney, then that's a loss leader for me to hit the financial goals that I'm looking to achieve. And so what I'm suggesting to those people in the audience is really understand what your goal is financially prior to your year, and then you reestablish, you know, twice a year and look at what those goals look like. But the reality is you can get caught doing so many deals that make you no money and say, I've done 100 deals and you've made 50 grand. Yeah. And at the end of the year, scratching your head, like, what am I doing? And it takes away from your canvassing too. So I give my junior brokers an idea of what their day looks like when they start coming in, when they're taking meetings, when they're making calls. I expect my juniors to make 300 calls a week minimum, or 300 reaches out minimum. I also have an expectation for them that if you're in the business X period of time or less, this is your goal financially. And after a certain period, this may be the cold-blooded truth, if you're not making those goals, then we're going to have to agree to have you just move on, or we're going to have to figure out an alternative. But I'm also responsible for training those people. So as brokers, that we're as leaders, we need to make sure that we're training people the right way to help us, help them. So it's a win-win scenario.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, Natalie, can I jump in?
Go ahead, Brittany.
I didn't see who's speaking. Is that Brittany?
Oh, Tiffany. Hi. Oh, sorry.
I can't tell who's talking, but of course,
can you
go ahead?
So, first and foremost, you guys are giving some amazing advice here, and I'm taking notes myself. One of the things that I would say in terms of prospecting, 2 things actually, and I'll make it very short. 1, don't be afraid to volunteer and be a part of different organizations. When we talk about how do you get into the rooms with some of these different people, some of these, you know, top thought leaders and C-level executives, you got to put yourself in the room. And sometimes that means volunteering your time to sit on a board, and it's kind of stalkerish, but sometimes you look at some of those people and say, okay, well, what organizations do they either participate in from a standpoint of board member, or maybe they just support that organization, and you get in there and you start making impact in that organization and start easing closer and closer to those decision makers that you want to do those large transactions with, especially when you're talking about corporate accounts. In terms of small to mid-sized businesses, I would say this is the time to be creative, right? The pandemic gave us an opportunity to really start to add value. And what I have done that's been very successful for us, I provide value-added content on my social media pages, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and I have been able to receive a ton of referrals, a ton of businesses. Now, all of them are not good, but I will tell you that my business, my pipeline has increased 150% just because I have provided value-added information. And so I would say when you're prospecting, think about non-traditional ways of getting people to pay attention to you. How do you get people to know that you're the expert in the industry and you're the only person that they should want to work with? And so that would just mean, making sure that you're out front. And like I said, volunteer, get involved in some of those organizations, because those organizations are going to put you front and center with key decision makers.
That is awesome. And thank you so much for joining us, Tiffany. I know that you came on a little bit later, which we had discussed. And so I'm so happy to have you joining us, Tiffany Ryland. Please make sure that you're following her, everybody on the stage and in the attendees. And I say that because she has so much value to add. She was #1 CREI pick on LinkedIn because of the value that she adds to the industry. I'm just really, really proud to even know her. So thank you, Tiffany. And you speak with such passion. You get me so pumped up. So
thank you so much, Natalie.
I'm excited. I don't know. It's like you're like a friggin' cup of coffee. So thank you. And
thank you. I just want to chime in real fast and talk about the not so good side of prospecting. And it's the actual, you're going to screw up. You're going to mess up. You're going to screw up. And sometimes you might not even know it. And it's okay. Because half the time, those are, even if you're interviewing a client, you're going to learn from that. You're going to learn from your mistakes. And if you have a senior broker, lean on them. If you have a question, if you need backup going to meet a client, if you're not quite sure, if you're not confident in your BOVs, lean on your broker. They're not going to think less of you. And half the time, they want to help you. In my situation, I got into this whole mess of brokerage through my husband, and he is my senior broker. And believe me, I do not like not knowing something and having to go to him for help. I can't stand it, but they really want to help you. They're not going to judge you. You're not going to win every deal. And I believe in teamwork as far as commercial real estate goes. If you're trying to get this client to sign and they're not real big on you for whatever reason, hand it off to maybe another teammate. I have a listing where I couldn't get this client to call me back, send a text, email, anything. And I finally reached out to her after not hearing anything for about 4 to 5 weeks and said, there's someone else on my team I'd like for you to meet. And, she does a lot of work with her father in your area. I think you two would really get along. Would you like me to make the connection? She texts back immediately. Sure, that would be great. So sometimes you don't even know what you did wrong and it doesn't matter. You're still going to be able to learn from that. And in my case, I'm still working on the deal. Just for some reason, she liked the way the other person sounded better. And don't take offense by that. Just stay positive, believe in yourself, because if you are genuine and if you are real, it's going to work out for you. So that's my 2 cents.
Such an important message, Elizabeth. And people that are new, they're going to hear that today and they're going to remember it in 7 years and they're going to go, I wish I would have listened 7 years ago. It takes years for people to understand how true that is. So thank you. That's such a great point. And Jeff would be challenging to work for. So.
Hey, Natalie.
But isn't it so important? Sorry, isn't it so important to know that it's okay to be wrong and not to have the right answer?
Yeah.
I mean, you will end up looking way worse by giving bad advice and bad insight. And even if you go to the most senior person in your office and you've got a question for them, first off, you're going to make them feel great because every one of the panelists today, including myself, feel very humbled and excited to share, even a little bit of the knowledge that we've acquired over the many years in our career. So you want to go to them because they want to tell you the things that they know, but even they're still learning. It's the kind of business, the day you retire, you'll learn something new. You cannot and will not have the answer to everything. There's just it's like science. I mean, truly it is. Things are evolving, things are changing, and there are circumstances like, a pandemic that none of us has ever been through until now to try and figure out how do you advise your clients on what the best thing for them to do is when you've never been through this, when no one's ever been through this, or whatever the situation might be. So just be really comfortable in not knowing the answer and being able to tell people, that's a really great question. I'd like to go get the right answer for you instead of making something up. They'll appreciate and respect you more for doing that.
Such a breath of fresh
You know,
air.
one of the things, Natalie, one of the things that I do in every meeting I go to is I bring in a team to pitch business. I never pitch business solo, because very similar how most of my accounts work is you'll never have one person working on an account. So I'll bring a project manager in, bring a workplace specialist in, which is something during the pandemic, I think we're all probably figuring out the workplace strategy and how clients are moving forward with hybrid models and figuring out what the next iteration of the workplace is. So it'd be interesting to hear what some of the panelists and maybe some people in our who are in our Zoom right now are using workplace strategies. What are they advising people on? I just had a law firm I advised, for example.
Mike, I'll give an example.
Okay, go ahead, Michael.
So Grace has been working with me for 9 months, and so basically we go on a tour, show 4 spaces, in 4 buildings. The last building, Grace and I are used to just snapping the LCD screen and sending it to our virtual assistant and saying, hey, stack all these buildings, put in Excel, get their email addresses off the website and guess info at whatever, so that we have like 25 emails for the building. But remember, there's delis there. CEOs that pay a ton of money for renting, they hate leaving their little office space. It's just like psychological. So they'll go down to the deli. The deli knows the CEOs all day long because they got the corporate cards. So there's a little bit of like a psychological way of staying inside a building, even if it's an hour longer and just sitting there. You'll see who comes in. If you see 3 people talking to one person, hey, can I take time off next week? Or can I sit and talk to you about what I'm working on? Could be an executive or a CEO. So we spend 1 more hour just canvassing or stacking the building physically, because we're the rest when we tour. So we're already in the building. We're not going to just go right home. So stack a building 50 times a year. That's 1 time a week. Again, if you have time. I know everyone's busy, but that's one thing that Grace is brand new, and she's already stacking buildings like a pro. I call it the T effect. And sorry, I'm going to talk too long, but you walk out of the space that you toured, you thank the client, Mrs. Wainwright, thank you very much. I'm going to stack this building for new clients. The client goes, holy shit. Like, you're all about building businesses. I should be connected to this heavy hitter.
Yep.
The other thing I just want to say is I work tenant reps in San Diego. Most people drink coffee, drink beer, they run, they fish, they cycle, and they walk. This morning, I walked with a client. No, I ran, walk, whatever. We're both not perfectly in shape, but 1 hour, a $5 coffee with him. And we talked more about his entire life. And then he thanks me, and I'm supposed to be the one thanking him. And I'm like, shoot, why don't I ask these people early on if they want to just go for a run 2 miles from their house? So he asked for the address. I put in one that was next to a coffee shop. We ran a little bit and then had coffee. Never knew the guy was like this type. Who knows if it works out or not, but that was my swing at the bat for another idea outside of just stacking buildings, is trying to meet a client that does exercise.
Okay, I love that. And Michael Mazzotta is the founder of tenantreps.com, everybody. We host a monthly mastermind for tenant reps around the globe. Big firms, little firms, designations, no designations, all are invited. If you want more information, please reach out to he or I. And when he says stacking a building, that means you go into a building, you see the directory, you take photos, and you start memorizing who's in the building. You need to know your market. And so that's what he's saying. If you're there, even if you have a doctor's appointment, you go in, you find out who's there. And so you are mining clients. So if you are new to CRE, you're just joining a team. I get this question all the time from my mentees. How do I add value immediately to the team that I'm on? That's what you do. You go into these buildings and you find out who's in them, and you go to the team lead, the team broker, and you say, hey, I was at 653 Town Center, and you start saying these are all the tenants. And so that's added value immediately to your to the lead broker. So that answers that question. So thank you, Michael. Great point.
Yeah. And Carol said the best thing ever. She said, eat, shop, and live in your market. You look at the senior guys, they live in the richest gated communities with the richest CEOs. I mean, that's when you're at the top of the game. If you're starting out new, eat, live, and sleep in your market. Drive through it to get to work. Drive out of there. Go to the dentist in that market, even if they're not as great as the dentist you love across town. Once you start building your little empire of 10 million square feet or less, your little tiny zip codes, you're going to start to realize you know everything, the color of the buildings, you're going to know how they're designed, where to park. I mean, you can tell people the craziest stuff. Grace and I today, russianschool.com, they want us to write an offer, and she goes, Michael, she goes, I see power lines on Google Maps. Can you get somebody to see if there's wattage that would go up against the building, because we're going to have so many children in there. I just happen to have a friend that bought a wattage meter. I'm going to go ask the guy if we can go use it, and I'm going to videotape myself doing it just so she thinks, geez, I don't think any broker has ever tested the wattage off the back of a building because I saw a power line. And I'm just going to go up there and get a coffee and do it. Like, I have no sweat to do it. And I've never done it in my 16 years. And we just got the email an hour ago.
I want that recorded, because I'm kind of hoping that you take some, so you get a little electrocuted. Am I the only one on?
Oh, I'm down. I'm down. I think it's so funny. I want to do it too, even though it's Grace's client. I just think it's just so nice.
Well, and the other thing about living in your market, like the biggest thing that I would say that I utilize LinkedIn for is connecting with anybody that I want to do business with. And so now what used to always be cold calls for me now have turned into warm calls, because now I connect with every CEO, every director of logistics, distribution, everybody that I want to do business with. And because of my LinkedIn presence, you know, they're seeing my post every single day. And then now I also look at my posts at the end of the day and see who's liked or commented on them. And if they've liked them, they're going to get a phone call the next day. And then it completely has turned for me, where everything used to be a cold call to now my world is basically a world of warm calls because of my LinkedIn presence. So if you connect, so just like living in your market and breathing your market, if you connect with all those decision makers on your market and LinkedIn, and then you start building your presence, then it's so much easier to get in front of people. And I agree with you, Michael. Like, my whole deal now, instead of formal pitches, I want to take guys to coffee or lunch before I even get to the pitch phase. And then there's never a pitch phase, because I created synergy over coffee or lunch, and now I'm their guy.
Not even a pitch.
Thank you. And I didn't even know $5 for a coffee. It's just such an intimate experience. And you pay for it. You just trigger in their minds, hey, I'm buying coffee, gotta meet you, all this stuff. And it hits one time a year, you're in. That's your pitch. You don't have to go to their building, get through the gatekeeper, you know, do all this stuff. You literally just meeting him on his way or her on her way to coffee.
Yep.
And there's Starbucks everywhere.
And you mentioned, you mentioned,
Michael, sorry, Natalie, just to add to that point as well, and the previous one about the stacking of the buildings. One thing that I've seen, not only because it's just plain good common sense and being a good person, but befriend gatekeepers and befriend the guys of security in the building and befriend the guy who's there. But when I say befriend, it's really like genuine, like know their name, know that they like soccer, etc. So funny story, and this got me an exclusive with a client that was doing tours, which is weird, as a test for the different brokers that they had. And they went with me and two others for other buildings. And when we come into the building, we were in different cars. They were parking, and the security guys were like, no, you cannot park here, blah, blah. And they were like, not rude, but very serious. And they were like, oh, this is hassle. And then I drove in behind them, and I was like, hey, Luis, how are you? Hey, Alvaro, did you saw the game last night? Yes, no. Oh, they are with you? Do you need parking? Let me put these ones in front of you because they come with you. And that resonated a lot with the client, because they were like, one, this guy's in these buildings all the time because they know their name, they saw the game, and they like each other. And they'd also portray like, this guy is a good guy, not to the CEOs and everyone, but to every single level of, let's say, the food chain. And that really resonates with people. And that would be like the number one, right? Tip, befriend everyone in the building, not just the CEO and the CFO and who you're looking for.
That's such a good.
I would like to add, Natalie, the three things that really work for me with prospecting. One, have a digital footprint. The moment I came into the industry, created the social media handles, had the tenant rep, bought the domain. I mean, it's not that I'm going to open up my firm now, but I'm thinking long-term in the business. You know, most people that do make it past the first 2-3 years, they're in here for the long haul. So just secure your digital real estate. Out of the deals that I have working now, I'd say a little over half of it has come from people I've connected on social media with. The second one is ask for referrals from your clients. These business owners, they hang out with other business owners. Their friends are the owners of this other big franchise, or their friends own this big company that knows this other person. Ask for referrals, ask for them to set you up. Can you put me in front of that person? I'm chasing a grocery store right now, and my client has lunch with the grocery store owner, and I'm like, can you give me the number? Can you get me in? And he's like, yeah, we'll set it up. We'll take you out to lunch and we'll bring you with us, because she won't talk business unless we're doing it over lunch. Also I go back to my existing clients. A lot of brokers leave they do that one deal, forget about them, and then I'm doing their second deal, and I'm like, why isn't your first broker here? So with my clients, I set it up for the second deal. My first conversation with my clients is, I got to make sure to get your first deal right so that I can get the second deal, the third deal, the fourth deal. I'm not here for the one deal thing. And so I check in every so often. How's it going? People go back to your clients that you've set up. I mean, I think at some point you do outgrow some of them, but there's those businesses that you leave on the table if you don't go back to your existing clients. And the last part for my prospecting is my qualifying my prospects. I give them the exclusive representation agreement. If they don't sign it, it's my indicator that they're going to have a hard time signing the lease when it comes their way. So it's not so much that I do want to be the exclusive representative, but when I pitch to them, it's, look, to me, if you're unhappy with my service, let's just go our separate ways, because I want you to be happy. I want to be happy while I work. I'm my best self, and I perform the best I possibly can when I'm happy. So if for any reason we're not happy, we tear up the contract, we both move our separate ways. But if they don't sign it, then I know that when the LOI comes to final stage, it's going to be a hard time for them to sign and commit to the deal if they can't commit to me now.
That is such a great point.
Natalie, I wanted to jump back to one thing Michael Arnold said a minute ago, but first, Joe and Carol, talking about retaining and taking care of your clients. You better be in contact with your clients, because we're calling them. So, I mean, if you're not taking care of your clients and staying in front of them, somebody else is always calling them. Don't think I got this guy in my back pocket. He's not going anywhere, because you'll be surprised, and it won't be a good surprise. But Michael said something really interesting that we didn't get to dive into, and that's the concept of teaming. I think for new brokers, you're going to get a mentor, and hopefully your mentor is good. But the best thing for you to do is to try and get on a team. And that's in a transactional sense, transactional brokerage. You can go to all the big meetings and you don't have to say anything. You just shut up and listen. And that's a really good way to learn. And eventually you know enough to be dangerous, and you can contribute, and eventually you can lead a team. But from a pitching business and winning business and prospecting perspective, like Michael said, I mean, we don't typically go in anywhere without a team, especially if you're pitching larger clients, more sophisticated clients these days. They don't want just a transactional broker. If that's your value proposition when you're calling a guy, you're going to be SOL, because they're looking for so many other things now. You've got to have so many other arrows in your quiver. And if you're a really good transactional broker, chances are you don't know much about project management, construction management, lease administration, all these things that they want to know about. So to the extent you can surround yourself with that expertise, even marketing, take that into a meeting, you're going to be that much better off. So I think teaming is critical these days.
Absolutely. And Brittany, I want to get to you, Brittany. Brittany is in the Las Vegas market, CCIM, and literally one of the first deals that I ever did was with Brittany as a landlord broker on the other side, and one of the best in our market. I know she won't say that, so I'm going to say it for her. Thank you for joining us, Brittany.
Hi, Natalie. I appreciate it. Sorry, I'm trying to, it's hard to jump in. It's hard to jump in. Anyways, but I mean, first off, I just have to say that there is so much value here. I only wish that when I was new to the industry, there was a panel like this to soak up all of this information, because I can probably tell you that I've made a lot of mistakes as a broker, and looking back on it, I mean, they're all opportunities to learn from. And, I think I've become the broker that I am today because of those mistakes. But, I was brought up through a broker with a small shop, broker, owner, developer. And just the way that he did business in the market, I thought, okay, that's how I need to do business in the market too. And and honestly, I think it rubbed people the wrong way for a while. And I don't even think I really knew that it was rubbing people the wrong way. I thought that's how business was done, and so I took my broker's lead, and I responded to inquiries on our shopping centers, with really no regard to how it was coming across. And I probably think even still today, I'm trying to rebuild my local community of brokers. And I'm learning more every day about the relationships. And it's, and I know we've spoke a lot about the relationships with tenants and clients, but having the broker relationship within your market is important, because people want to do deals with the brokers that they like doing deals with, right? So if you've got a client and they're looking for 2,000 square feet, you're going to quickly think, okay, well, A, B, and C, I know are landlord brokers. Let me call them first and just see if they've got anything in the market, and obviously you're going to hit the streets and do all of your due diligence and so on and so forth. But those initial relationships that you've got are always going to be kind of your first go-to. And so I want to throw that out there. I've got tons of, mistakes and learned from scenarios that I can be throwing out there. The digital presence is awesome. Natalie Puccini on here. I've never met her in person, but I see all of her social media, and I feel like I know her, and I feel like, man, if I ever come across a tenant that is doing business in Florida or wants to expand to Florida, I feel like I know a broker in the Florida market that I would trust sending my tenant to. And it would be somebody like, Natalie on here that I've never even met. So I think that social media presence has, especially over time and especially in today's market, really, it's really added value, especially in our world, in the broker network world, and people traveling nationally, so to speak.
And Freddie, the big thing I agree with what you're saying is get brutal advice and early. I'm originally from New York. I came out here. I used to say, how you doing all the time to all these clients. They're California clients. They're not used to the Italian, how you doing? And it was a factor. I didn't know until a broker, Brennan Keith, said, I hear you every time saying it. And I don't know if you really say it to mean it, but you say it every time. I'm like, oh, geez, thank you. I was like, thank you for the brutal advice. Just the little things. And if you do work by yourself, you have a team, go meet other tenant rep brokers. They are in the same boat, no matter level 1, level 2, or level 3. They're in the same boat. They want bigger fish. They're always wanting to chase the bigger stuff. So they get a chance to laugh at your level, and then they'll help. 99% of the time, they're willing to help. They literally will meet you for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or a run outside of their family. But you can always get help. Jamal's on this panel. Jamal and I, we've done deals together. We've worked in the same office together. We talk all the time. We always talk about what other people are doing. And this even till this morning. And now we're on this together. It's been a pleasure because he is doing so many different things himself that I'm learning from and I'm implementing slowly. And it's just, getting that bullet advice helps out early on and in mid-career.
I agree. And just to throw out, staying on your same point, Michael, and then also sort of a non-traditional route. There is right now I've got this space in a shopping center that I'm having the hardest time getting leased. The landlord only wants to do certain things with it. And so it's kind of limiting what we can really bring into the center. There's a shopping center right next to us that also has a couple vacancies. They've got a completely different business model with how they're looking to lease, who they're looking to fill. And I reached out to the broker that's repping that center and said, hey, listen, I know we've both got vacancies and I know we're both offering different things to tenants. Do you mind if, I get a call and they're looking for a smaller suite, I can't demise, I'll kick them over your way. And I know you've got some small boxes and so on and so forth. And we can just sort of, because if there's 100% occupancy, I'm in the retail market. If there's 100% occupancy in the area, or if that center next to you is 100% occupied, it's just going to feed over into your center because people want to be in that trade area. So we've been just tossing each other's brochures back and forth, kind of helping each other land a deal and really just fill up our neighborhood with those key tenants. So just another way to work together with your local broker network.
Natalie.
Yes, I'm going to jump in. I have been waiting. Brittany, so much thank you for mentioning the Florida thing. That is like exactly my goal with having a digital presence, is people knowing that I'm in Florida and I do tenant rep. So actually if, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. Totally can.
Okay, sorry, everybody froze for a second. So I am such a proponent of having a digital presence. I started it right when I got into the industry. It was very kind of taboo of, getting out in social media, but I'm in retail. I feel like it's a little more casual. I'm not going to speak to office and industrial because it's not my thing, but I made an Instagram specific to CRE. I was huge on LinkedIn in the beginning of my career. And I remember being at a conference, I was sharing this on Clubhouse earlier. I remember being at a conference when I was 22 years old, and people that were in the business 10, 20 years were coming up to me talking about my posts on LinkedIn. And they knew who I was before I had ever met them. And that's huge. That's huge. I didn't have to pitch myself. I didn't even know who these people were. And I did deals with them down the road, which is what's the value of that? I can't even put a number on what that does for you. And so much of my prospecting goes through social media at this point and comes from referrals because people know I'm in Florida and I do retail. And I can't even tell you how many calls a week that I get just on hey, I have this guy talking about Florida. Is that something that you do? And sometimes I refer it to someone else. Sometimes I take it on. It just depends. But it's such a key component to my career at this point that I'm anyone that asks me about it, I'm do it. Do it. It's absolutely free. It doesn't take that much time. Just make a social media account on whatever platform you like and go for it. And I also have to go to the collaboration and the trading that Brittany was talking about, especially in retail. If you have a property next to someone else, just a quick call to them and say hey, I have a 3,000 square foot bay. It's the only one I have left. If anyone else calls me that fits your vacancies, I'll be happy to send them your way if you can send any of that size to me. And it's a quick call, and that has gotten me deals time and time again. So if you're not collaborating, you have to. You kind of have to.
100,000,000%. Yes. And office brokers and retail brokers talk to each other. I give out 4 retail leads a week. So it's huge to talk to each other. and follow Natalie. Oh my God. And we're going to be doing a new to CRE social media playbook. And yes, I'm not even asking you, Natalie, you have to join us.
Yes.
So yes, I'm glad that Brittany gave you that shout out. And you're doing great too, Brittany.
Can I follow up on that on retail? Something that's worked well for our retail agents is actually boots on the ground. They call it a block program. So our agents are going into an area that they want to walk, most of them near their home, and they're creating these leave behinds, and they're actually walking into the retail locations, talking to the managers, getting to know them, hear what's going on in the community, having a leave behind that they have with their photo and contact information that would bring value, something that's happening in the community. And they'll walk several blocks at a time. They'll spend about an hour a week doing this. And then after they've done that for a few weeks, then they'll expand on to the next few blocks. But they also start taking that information they've got from the tenants and that's valuable information for the landlords to know. So they'll start calling on the landlords, hey, did you know this was going on in the area? That's been very powerful for some of our retail agents. So I thought I'd help you guys with that one as well.
That's excellent advice. Yes.
Natalie, I was gonna say on the office side, and someone, I forget who said it earlier, so forgive me. Someone commented about don't be a transactional broker. Our approach within our organization, what I've done for the last 24 years, and I just do tenant rep office, and maybe I have a couple national retail tenants and a couple national office ones. But I mean, focus on being a consultant or an advisor. If you come in talking about real estate, like Conrad said earlier, Coy, you're just like everybody else. And Natalie, you and I discussed this at the pool last, Saturday, when we had a couple of cocktails. We graciously took me to the airport. Don't come off as being a broker. Most people don't even value brokers as a whole. Come from a consultative approach. And I'm going to give you one quick example that everybody on the panels probably use. And if you haven't, more than welcome to use it. And everybody who's in the audience. I pitched a law firm. The law firm was working with 3 other brokers. I asked one question. I said, what is your per partner profitability ratio? And to a T, he couldn't even expand upon that. This is the COO of the company. And I said, how much space do you think you need? As we started our conversation, he said 20 to 25,000 square feet. I said, well, how do you know what you really need? Well, we need this amount of office. I said, have you done a workplace strategy study? No. Okay. Would you find it beneficial to do so? Because realistically, if I save them 2,000 square feet at $14,000 a month, in that 2,000 at $7 a foot, I said, you're going to save $1,600,000 over 10 years. I go, how many associates could you hire with $1,600,000? He said, probably 10, 160,000 a year. I go, how much revenue could those associates make for your firm? What's that multiple? Is it 3x, 4x? He said, probably 2 to 3 over a short period of time. So I said, so your value, the revenue per partner would increase exponentially on a 2,000 square foot savings on a real estate side. And he said, I didn't even think about it that way. So think about how you're advising from a consultative approach different than from a transactional standpoint.
Michael, that is so true. I need to jump in here because I feel like half of the prospects or clients that I have terrible things to say about brokers. It's just not like we're not kings and queens of the world over here. Okay. We are service providers. Like the clients that we have, real estate's only a portion of their business. Like, of course they care about it, but they also have operations to run. So we kind of have to do our job and let them do their job and run their business. So that's a great point. And so much of my social media content has been like making fun of brokers almost because it gets actually so much traction. It's actually an industry joke at this point. So lean on it for sure.
That's
to piggyback what Michael said, if you're young, use benchmarking to your advantage, right? If you're going into law firms, know what benchmarking their associate size offices, their partner size offices are, so you can actually go in and speak knowledgeably about what's going on in their industry, and it'll help them save money. It goes to their bottom line. You look like an all-star, and you're probably going to get the requirement. And to talk about prospecting, if you're younger, use LinkedIn especially if you're an office broker, after you stack a building. But there's a program called Lusha, I think it's Lusha, and we use it. it basically rips people's information off of LinkedIn. So, if you can't get into the actual suite to talk to anybody, you'll be able to get their cell phone number along with their email. It's definitely worth the money. I highly suggest it. We use it exclusively. So
That's
awesome.
Can you put it in the chat, Jamal?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with you, Michael and Jamal. I mean, the way that I try to portray and think when I'm trying to pitch is usually what we do is we tend to bias on the real estate matters, right? So what we need to do is to get that out of our minds and really ask what's really important to companies and CFOs and who we're actually talking to the law firms or to the IT firms, sorry, or the IT firms or whatever type of business you're pitching, right? So my thinking funnel works like this. I just start with a triple bottom line and I say, okay, the triple bottom line is people, profit, and planet. So Michael's example was based on profit, right? What is the ROI for the key partners on the law firm? But that can be the same for any other type of business. You just need to know how they measure their profit or their ROI, and you can talk about it. Are they fond of sustainability? Okay, we can go through that subject. How you can create your, I don't know, if you have technology, you always do a commuting pattern and sometimes you don't even know what it's for. You just put it on the presentation because it looks pretty. But if you can actually say, hey, we can decrease your complete footprint of carbon emissions by being closer to the office where your people live, okay, you hit the sustainability and the planet issue. Are you having trouble retaining your talent? What's your competition doing? And you get to your people part. And then you got your funnel of thinking down. And while you do that exercise, you'll get to very specific things, just as the example that Michael said. And that is awesome because real estate then will be just a secondary matter, which will be important. And that's how we make our revenue, but it's about business issues.
I completely agree with all three of you. And that has always been my approach, is to be more of a consultant. So many brokers do just kind of get in there and just try to get the deal and get the check and move on. But I think a lot of us are doing the consultant piece. A lot of us has been in the business for a while. We have to do it. It's necessary because that's how you get the best deal, is really understanding your client. Now, whether you take that a step further and you start having that dialogue back and forth with the client, that's a second thing. But we initially, the best brokers, are asking a ton of questions that the buyer probably or seller probably don't really understand what we're grabbing at, but we're going in for all those little details that we know can make or break the deal. So completely agree with you on that. And I think when you're, being in the new in the industry, it's important to know that you do need to know a lot of, what's the saying? I know a lot about a little things, or a little about a lot of things, because you'd be surprised what can save a deal or save your client money. I had a client that there was a property management issue, and I've done a lot of property management in my career. And it was a question that needed to be asked, and they hadn't thought about it. And sure enough, when I approached the landlord about it, the listing agent, I said, hey, was this taken care of? Something that normally necessarily would not have gone under my heading, but I went ahead and did it. It saved the client probably $60,000 to $70,000. That once they purchased that property, that it would have been too late. So it's very, very important. And I can tell you that's one of the things they're going to remember the most about me is me coming up with this, asking this property management question, literally probably a week before closing. No, probably about 2 weeks before closing. So it is important to know a little about a lot of different things. And how you do that is make sure you're networking with people in different areas, because you'd be surprised what you pick up on in conversation. To Natalie's point, I totally agree with you that there's this thing with this stigma, unfortunately, that brokers have. And I think everybody on this panel, we've been blessed enough and we've been genuine enough to bust that stigma. That's why we're in the business as long as we've been. But what I have found is that when people do find a broker and they know you're genuine, they feel like they've hit the lottery. I have clients that are like you are my broker. Like, we're doing more deals. I mean, they are like elated, like they just hit the jackpot. So people are looking for good brokers, and just make sure you're theirs.
Monica, you make a really
quick.
good point. I think
ahead, Jamal.
everybody needs to join bigger groups of brokers to talk to people that are outside of their specific little area. Like Michael Mazzotta and Natalie Wainwright started tenantups.com, which I believe is national tenant rep kind of group of people sharing ideas. I'm also involved in one with Natalie Puccini down in Florida called CRE Digital Army. Myself and Kristen Rebick have a clubhouse room for peer office tenant reps. Oh, and Carol, I'm sorry, I should never. But I get so many good tips and like deal points out of every single conversation I have with these people, and it leads me to do better deals. It just overall makes you a stronger broker, and it gives you an opportunity, if you do have out of market transactions that need to be done, to have somebody on the ground that you can already trust. So I highly suggest involving yourself in something like that.
You guys, we are coming up to the end of our time for the new to CRE series. And so I do want to make sure that I clarify that I only help with the monthly mastermind. Michael Mazzotta is the sole founder and owner of tenantreps.com, the firm. Just want to make sure that I clarify that. You'd be like, oh, really? Yeah. Didn't you know I helped you found it? But
we're all family.
Sorry?
I said we're all family.
We are. That's actually, thank you for saying that. So I want to clarify, not clarify, but I want to say to all the attendees and everybody on this stage, this is a part of a long conversation. Everybody on this stage is approached by, especially Joe. Huge shout out to Joe that runs a firm in Los Angeles. And he is one of the most forward thinking, I don't know what to, founders of a firm. What is your title, Joe? I'm so blonde.
Just partner
of a firm. You are so amazing what you're doing for females in this industry and what you do for the brokers that join your firm. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not kidding. Like, thank you for being on this stage. And you're just a prime example of somebody that you have a firm, and if your brokers want to be better, and if females are interested in getting better, you partner them up with C-suite brokers and everything that you're doing. So for the attendees, if you hear somebody on this stage that said something and you're like, I want to know more, or I don't, and you feel silly, you're not quite sure what they said. Everybody on here were strategically selected because they're kind, they're honest, and they're a part of the CRE fam. And that's why they're here, because they're kind and they're incredibly successful, but they're kind. And that's literally why they're here. So reach out to them via email, LinkedIn. Gabe Marans had to jump off. Coy Davidson had to jump off. Tiffany Ryland isn't on camera, but she's incredibly kind, and they're all accessible. They will respond to your messages. Reach out to them. They'll do Zooms with you if they have the time. But this entire series is meant to make you better. We want you in the industry. You can make it. You can last. And it's about being kind to one another and being better together. So that's what this is all about. Thank you so much to the panelists. I hope that you all found value in being here and contributing. And I'm so thankful to all of you this year. I know how busy you all are. So thank you. Thank you. The chat will be made available. The video recording will be made available. Thank you to everybody. You're all amazing. And I love you very much. So have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Natalie. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Goodbye. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Bye.
I'm sending everybody a LinkedIn and